Welcome, everyone, to the Women of Peace Corps Legacy Deborah Harding Award and Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award annual ceremony. Pamela Martin, co-chair of the awards committee, and myself, co-president of Women of Peace Corps Legacy, will be the co-facilitators. Megan Celestine, co-president of Women of Peace Corps Legacy, is this evening's producer. We are honored to have two outstanding awardees, Dr. Theresa Castillo and Jaynice Del Rosario. We are also privileged to be celebrating this event on the International Day of the Girl Child. Both this important day and the event this evening remind us of the challenges facing women and girls today as we push to succeed, thrive, and win. We are part of this global challenge, including here in the United States. Daily national and international headlines reinforce the need so strongly for our work. Women of Peace Corps Legacy is a nonprofit organization of those who support women and girls and those who have touched Peace Corps in any of many ways. Our over 600 members participate in our monthly virtual programs, such as the Ukraine event that we just had last month, our mentorship program that pair women to share knowledge and experiences for professional development, our annual awards program being celebrated tonight, and the organizations our awardees select for their awards to support, our newsletters, and our mutual support for friendships to strengthen personal and professional journeys. The opportunity to join us on the website is in the chat, and we will be noting it again at the end of the program. Now, as we begin this evening, I will turn the program and our presentation of the outstanding awardees to Pamela Martin. Pam, it's yours.
Thanks, Jody. So good evening, everyone, on this International Day of the Girl Child, and welcome again to Women and Girls Win. As Jody said, on this special day, the Women of Peace Corps Legacy honors the winner of two special awards. So the first, the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award, recognizes a Peace Corps woman whose contributions have made a significant difference in the lives of women and girls in the world. And the second, the Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award, is similar, but this award recognizes an emerging woman leader under the age of 40 who has demonstrated her dedication to improving the lives of women and girls. So both winners are provided a small grant, which can be given to a Peace Corps volunteer project of their choice or to another deserving organization. So for our program this evening, each of our awardees will speak briefly about their work and the challenges facing women and girls in the world today. And then we should have ample time for questions and open discussion. All right, so let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our first, Dr. Theresa P. Castillo, the 2022 winner of the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award. And here's just a little bit about Theresa's background. Informed by Peace Corps service early in her career in Turkmenistan, Morocco, and Mali, Theresa has worked in the fields of gender, social justice, and health equity for more than 25 years and has helped thousands of women and girls around the world. Dedicated to community-led innovation, she partners with multidisciplinary actors. Her research explores immigrant, refugee, and Indigenous women and girls' health issues. Theresa serves on several health equity committees and peer-reviewed journal panels and presents globally on gender, sexual and reproductive health, youth, and Indigenous rights. Currently, she's Chief Program Officer at Health Right International, and she teaches, in addition to all that, she teaches at Bard College, New York University, and Teachers College, Columbia University. So Theresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pam, and happy International Day of the Girl to everyone. Today, we are celebrating a decade of this commemorative day of action, creating a forum for girls' voices to be heard globally. Today, we highlight the need to invest in girls, educating the public, and mobilizing political will to achieve gender equality. It is a great honor to be named this year's recipient of the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award. I am humbled to be included amongst this distinguished group of awardees named after a visionary champion of gender justice and human rights. I look forward to sharing my reflections on this day, promoting women and girls' rights by highlighting the current state of inequalities, the challenges, and the opportunities for action in the years ahead. Next slide. Women and girls disproportionately experience discrimination, neglect, and abuse globally, but they also demonstrate boundless resilience and resourcefulness in the wake of adversity. In 2016, the UN established an ambitious sustainable development goal, Goal 5, to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2030. While there has been progress globally in reducing gender discrimination and violence, as well as improve access to reproductive health care, this goal is daunting. Here are two statistics that exemplify this point. First, women comprise only 26% of national parliamentarian seats globally. At this pace, it would take another 40 years for women and men to be represented equally in legislature. Next, over 11 million girls may not return to school as the COVID-19 crisis subsides. While girls face unprecedented challenges to their education, research tells us that an educated girl is less likely to marry early and have children while young. An educated girl will earn higher income, have the confidence and freedom to make decisions for herself, and build a better future for herself and family. Next slide. But before I delve into the challenges and opportunities, I want to share a little bit about my journey. Here are two photos that anchored my career in this field. The first photo is of Smurfette. For anyone who grew up in the 1980s and watched the Smurfs cartoon series, you will know that Smurfette's appearance on the show was exciting and groundbreaking. I, like Smurfette, grew up in a household filled with boys. I have 3 brothers. And a neighborhood dominated by boys. I was constantly challenged by traditional gender norms of what a girl should or could do. This was the birth site of my feminist activism. Thankfully, my parents surrounded me with positive messages to nurture my growth and potential, like this beloved poster that hung in my childhood room, along with another encouraging me to follow my dreams. Likewise, my brothers always gave me the space to voice my perspectives and taught me to be resilient in my beliefs, even if we disagreed. Essentially, my family gave me the foundational tools to navigate the landscape of gender inequity in the world. Fast forward, after working for a few years in public health postgraduate school, I joined the Peace Corps as a health volunteer. Growing up in an immigrant family with relatives living across the globe, I was aware of and eager to learn about other cultures. On the right is a picture of me under my gua, or porch, in Bambara during my service in Mali. I did not have the usual tour of duty as I served in 3 countries, Turkmenistan, Morocco, and Mali, during and in the aftermath of the 9/11 destruction. Peace Corps gave me a crash course introduction to the principles that have guided my career in development for the past 2+ decades. These values include the importance of adaptability during crisis, listening to learn, co-creation, and sustainable community partnership. I am ever grateful for the wisdom attained during my Peace Corps service. Next slide. Here, I will address the current challenges facing women and girls globally. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by what is known as the triple C's, which threaten their health and well-being, all of which has exacerbated gender inequities. First, COVID-19. The pandemic has put families under duress and is expected to widen the gender poverty gap as poverty rates surge. Women's caregiving responsibilities and unpaid workloads increased under lockdown conditions. With reduced economic opportunities globally, we saw increases in incidences of sexual exploitation and gender-based violence. Girls dropped out of school, and in many places, there were increases in adolescent pregnancies, forced and early marriages, and female genital mutilation. These disparities hit hardest in marginalized communities. As well, climate change impacts the most vulnerable women and girls. Research tells us that women and girls are 14 times more likely than men to die during a climate disaster and more likely to experience hunger in the aftermath. As we have seen with droughts in Ethiopia, climate change has negative impacts on food security and endangers maternal health. Violence is also a consequence of extreme weather conditions as economic instability settles in, including increases in harmful practices such as child marriages. The last C is conflict. Mental health and protection are grave issues in fragile settings. Global conflict and displacement puts women and girls at high risk for gender-based violence. In conflict, rape is used as a weapon of war, extending violence to include torture, forced marriage, and human trafficking. At HealthRight, my organization focuses its Ukraine relief efforts on strengthening the response of the healthcare system and social services network to address such violence and trauma. As a consequence of the 3 C's, we must understand how these compounding crises shape vulnerability to avoid exacerbating gender inequities. Next slide, please. In 1995, at the 4th World Conference on Women, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action was established. This seminal progressive document thrust the idea of women's rights as human rights onto the global stage. More than 25 years later, we have a new revised framework for advancing women's rights. The Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security and the Rockefeller Foundation offer this global roadmap for the future, focusing on 7 key pillars for building back better. While I will not review this model in detail, I want to highlight 2 areas quickly: recognize and engage. Meaningful engagement of youth is essential. This generation must help build the tools and solutions to catalyze progress toward gender equality. Likewise, gender equality is everyone's responsibility. Women alone cannot champion this movement. Faith-based leaders, traditional authorities, and men and boys are essential partners in shifting attitudes around harmful norms. Next slide. Based on my experience, I see 4 noteworthy areas for investment to ensure women and girls thrive in the next decade. Inclusivity. First, I believe in making the invisible visible. We need to meet the moment during this great reckoning era of #MeToo and Black Lives Matter and make inclusivity a priority. In order to achieve gender equity, no group can be left behind. In addition to gender, women and girls have numerous identities accompanied by unique perspectives. Amplifying these intersectional voices is critical. We must create opportunities to collectively address and engage marginalized communities that have historically encountered stigma and discrimination. This includes women with disabilities, Indigenous women, and sexual and gender minorities. Next, safe spaces. When women and girls succeed, we all succeed. Safe spaces where women and girls feel physically and emotionally safe are pivotal to fostering empowerment and protection, especially in countries where public spaces are inhabited predominantly by men. In my community, during the height of the pandemic in 2020, I founded Unmuted Our Sisters' Voices, a women's empowerment group dedicated to sharing the stories of women of color. It is in strengthening and expanding these civic spaces, including virtual online worlds, that will be a catalytic force to propel women and girls into defining their own futures. Leadership. Women and girls are change makers and sources of change. And to center development on women and girls translates to gender parity at the decision-making table. To philanthropic donors, I urge them to move beyond supporting women's empowerment and fund women and girls movements. This will nurture autonomy and establish pathways to change defined by them, not dictated. As we witness the protests continue in Iran around the tragic death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, the need for inclusive leadership is glaringly evident. Cultivating women and girls leaders through mentorship and meaningful participation will move them into positions of power. I was fortunate enough to have many mentors at different stages of my career, both men and women, who gave me the confidence to transform spaces and challenge repressive narratives that hinder progress. In all sectors, our collective and diverse voices need to be present. And finally, research and data. The bedrock of advocacy is having clear documentation to reflect the realities of a situation. With data, we can hold communities, governments, and other key stakeholders accountable for the gaps in gender inequities faced. We need to strengthen our collective ability to measure, analyze, disaggregate, and use data for decision-making. Data is powerful, as evidenced here in the US, where the number of missing or murdered Native American women and girls is alarming. In some reservations, Native American women are 10 times more likely to die of homicide, above the national average. And in 2020, over 5,200 Native women and girls were reported as missing. Based on these statistics, state task forces have been developed and resources dedicated to police training and mandated data collection. Progress in these 4 areas can move the needle forward toward gender equity. Next slide. So this quote was one of my father's favorites. It is by Jose Rizal, a Philippine national hero activist and writer who fought against the Spanish during colonization. It translates as a person who does not look back and remember where she came from will never reach her destination. Next slide. It is in this spirit, with award prize money, I've chosen to donate 2 Peace Corps partnership funds, which support volunteer-led projects. The Rupee Gender Development Fund to continue the legacy of work on women's cooperatives and girls' empowerment activities, and the Philippines Country Fund in honor of my ancestral roots, which will support the community development projects related to disaster preparedness and recovery. Next slide. So I'm not sure if you can see me, but I'm holding my award, and it is with deep joy and gratitude that I accept this achievement award tonight. A special thank you to my family, teachers, mentors, and friends for their unwavering love and support over the years. Thank you to Women of Peace Corps Legacy for this great honor and for creating this forum to celebrate women and girls' achievements. There are countless unsung heroes and dedicated women's rights defenders in our communities, fighting for justice. I am one of many champions who commits to this work on a daily basis and remains resilient in the face of adversity. I am extremely humbled to accept this award and be part of that global feminist movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Theresa. Thank you. You've given us a lot to think about, and you so clearly speak from the heart, starting with your own personal experiences, which is just wonderful. But at the same time, we appreciate having a few key statistics and a bit of analytic framing and history to help us think about our topic this evening. So thank you very much. If everyone, please remember to write down in the chat any questions or comments that you have for our discussion afterwards. And now I would like to introduce our second speaker. I am again delighted to introduce Jaynice Del Rosario, the 2022 winner of the Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award. And first, just a little bit about Jaynice. While serving in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia, she served as National Coordinator of Gender and Development, designing and implementing local and regional programs for adolescent girls. But what really caught my eye in her background is that she also participated in the early planning meetings that eventually led to the Peace Corps' Let Girls Learn initiative, which, as some of you may know, was a very important initiative that really involved the entire agency for any number of years. So kudos to you, Jaynice. Jaynice has designed and led education and youth leadership initiatives at the Bronx Institute at Lehman College and at the Sadie Nash Leadership Project, helping over 125 young people get into college. So currently, she serves as a program officer for the Girls First Fund, a philanthropic collaborative supporting community-based organizations in the Global South that combat child marriage and help girls live self-determined lives. But a reason that we all should keep an eye on Jaynice is that in the future, she plans to directly resource girl-led projects and ideas because she believes girls have the energy, capacity, and courage to change the world. Over to you, Jaynice.
Thank you so much, Pam. 12 million girls under the age of 18 are married every year. That's one girl every 3 seconds. Yes, you heard that right, seconds. Driven by gender inequality and prevailing social norms, child marriage hinders girls' ability to get an education and puts girls at increased risk of teen pregnancy and gender-based violence. Today, on International Day of the Girl Child, we celebrate girls around the world for all that they are. We celebrate their brilliance, we celebrate their courage, and we celebrate their right to self-determination, including choosing who, why, and when to marry. Adolescent girls live at the intersection of power and vulnerability and navigate through the oppressions they face in ways that are particular to their stage of life. Girls like 16-year-old Nasiratu from Niger, first in her class, had her chair smeared with acid at school by the boy who came in second, causing her second-degree burns. Enlisting her father's support, she fought back and now runs her own organization dedicated to supporting girl leaders like herself who refuse to back down to male intimidation. Girls like 14-year-old Joanny from the Dominican Republic, who endured extreme poverty and hunger alongside her mother and younger sister when her father went abroad searching for a better life. With her mother's support, Joanny was able to stay in school despite her economic circumstances. She is now the leader of a thriving girls club in her community and is studying to become a doctor. Girls like 18-year-old Dilenia from New York, an Afro-Latina, who after not seeing herself reflected in any of the history books, helped create the Critical Theory and Social Justice Club at her high school. With support from a dedicated educator, she and fellow club members established the first ever high school trip to Cuba to study Afro-Latino history and culture. These girls are not anomalies. There are girls like them in every country, in every community, and in every school. And they need adults like us to see them, to hear them, to partner with them and help them create greater visibility, voice, and power for themselves. When I was a 16-year-old girl attending high school in the South Bronx, one winter day, the heat in my high school building suddenly shut off. There I was with my friends, dumbfounded, freezing, and unable to concentrate. Despite complaining and asking for heaters for weeks to no avail, we were told nothing could be done. Nothing could be done because heaters were considered a fire hazard. We were furious. So we started a protest. In our school, uniforms were mandatory and strictly enforced. So we refused to wear our uniforms until the heat was restored. Using the slogan, "No heat, no uniforms," we collected student signatures, and day after day, more and more young people showed up with signs refusing to comply with the school dress code. Some of our teachers supported us and cheered us on, while others wouldn't allow us in their classrooms. And though our numbers grew, it seemed not wearing our uniforms wasn't quite doing the trick. So we decided to call the news. Suddenly, newscasters were swarming the outskirts of our school, listening to our stories. We told them about our experiences in detail, provided videos and pictures, and waited anxiously to see ourselves on the 6 o'clock news. And just like that, the next day, we had heaters. Too often, adults forget the power of young people, but young people have the fearlessness and imagination required to really transform our world. Young people are collectivizing in South Africa, in Vietnam, in the Dominican Republic, in the United States, and wherever there is collectivizing, there are girls. Girls have potential beyond what we can see or imagine. And while they are powerful, it is difficult for them to seize their power in an adult-centric world. So today, on International Day of the Girl Child, let's recommit to investing in girls. Let us resource girl-led activism, girl-led scientific innovation, and girl-led businesses. Let's have the humility to acknowledge that we haven't done a great job and that we could use some help in righting the wrongs of our world. When I was a 21-year-old young woman, I took an illegal cargo boat from the Dominican Republic to Haiti. On that 6-hour voyage, I was afraid I would lose my life. We had no life vests, there were far too many people and things on the boat, and it was pitch dark. As I was praying for my life, I looked over and met a man who spoke Spanish and agreed to let my friends and I spend the night at his house when we landed. When we got to his house, he introduced us to his 3 women. 3 adolescent girls he had living with him, ages 14, 15, and 16, and a baby, the child he shared with the 16-year-old. Seeing this man, who must have been at least 40, living with these girls broke my heart. I was lucky that I was traveling with my white male friends whose sex and race acted as a protective buffer between me and him. That experience is one of many reasons why I'm deeply committed to ending the practice of child marriage and early unions, a practice that steals childhoods and traps girls in cycles of poverty and servitude. Not long after that experience, I joined the Peace Corps in Ethiopia. Peace Corps staff encouraged me to lead and allowed me to be creative in my endeavors. As National Coordinator of the Gender and Development Committee, I designed and implemented programs like the Action for Gender Equality Summit and the Yenya Connections pilot that centered adolescent Ethiopian girls and responded to their specific needs. And that is a fundamental reason why I am able to have the deeply meaningful and beautiful career that I have today. I have chosen Latinas y Líderes as the recipient of the $500 donation that comes with this award. Latinas y Líderes is an organization that is deeply committed to uplifting Dominican girls and providing them with access to education, life skills, and recreational activities. I am especially fond of this organization because it is led by a young Dominican girl and her mother, and they are true partners in this work. I am eternally grateful to the Peace Corps for the opportunities it afforded me. Opportunities so special and so unique, they could never be replicated. But my biggest thanks goes to my family, my parents, who supported my dreams of becoming a Peace Corps volunteer despite their greatest fears, and my now husband, who called me every single day I was in service and never wavered. They are the reason I am here. They are the reason I am me. Thank you.
So thank you, Jaynice. Thank you for those inspiring words, moving. Your passion for your subject really shines through your words. So thank you for sharing your stories and your passion with us. So I think it is pretty clear now why Theresa and Jaynice are winners and why they have won these very special awards. We really appreciate both of you for sharing your thoughts and insights on helping more women and girls win and thrive in this world. So thank you to you both. So it is now time for questions and open discussion. I think Megan has collected a number of questions to pose to our speakers. Is that right, Megan? You can also continue to put comments and questions in the chat as we discuss the questions. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, hello everyone. And thank you both, Jaynice and Theresa, for your inspiring stories. So for the first question, we're gonna ask, who are you today because of your Peace Corps experience?
So I can start. I shared a little bit in my remarks about the importance of Peace Corps teaching me some of those fundamental values that have guided my career thus far. I will say one outstanding thing that Peace Corps has taught me, having served in 3 predominantly Muslim countries at a time when there was so much anti-Muslim hate, it was a lesson in cultural humility. And you know, as gender norms vary across different cultural contexts, it's important to understand their roots, as well as how gender norms can be harmful, but also can also be a cultural asset where they are protecting the communities. And so for me, one important lesson is recognizing the vibrant feminist movements and activism within various countries that are already present. And my role has always been one of a listener and one to help facilitate and support initiatives when possible. And that certainly was a core lesson that I learned during my service with Peace Corps, creating spaces to nurture growth.
It's a really great question, and it's an interesting one for me to think about, because I was very fortunate to be part of a Peace Corps, to have a Peace Corps experience where the Peace Corps staff trusted me so much, and so I had a lot of freedom to be creative in my work, to work alongside volunteers and sort of imagine how to respond to the issues we were facing and apply for grants and do a lot of interesting things. And so the Peace Corps made me a really bold and creative leader. And it was interesting because after the Peace Corps, getting into jobs where you know, your boss wouldn't give you the same amount of freedom and creativity was really difficult for me. I was like, what do you mean I can't do this thing that I want to do? I can figure it out. I can get the money somehow. And so that was a little difficult for me, sort of having to sort of like earn my way again, earn that trust again that I felt we were kind of just given as volunteers. And so the Peace Corps has made me a really bold leader, and also the kind of leader that really believes in young people's abilities, because we were young and we, many of us didn't have a lot of prior experience, but we were hungry and we really wanted to serve and we wanted to do amazing things, and we did them. And so I really believe in the power of young people. And I think that experience is important, but sometimes you have a young person that's scrappy and hungry and excited, and they can sometimes really wow you. And so I'm really grateful for the experience, and I'm still trying to break down some of these walls, but we'll get there.
Thank you both. Yes, Jaynice, I always call it resourcefulness sometimes, especially as a volunteer. Thank you so much for those answers. So we have a question about what made you decide to join the Peace Corps?
I can start on this one. There were a lot of different reasons why I joined the Peace Corps. But one of the reasons was that I studied abroad in Cameroon. And while I was in Cameroon, I was doing a project on girls' education in the northern part of the country called Gaundere. And the northern part is mostly Muslim. And the work that I was doing was to really understand why a lot of girls were being kept out of school. And so I would go to different houses and do interviews with folks and see families. And I started to get the understanding that there was kind of a conflation between what folks did culturally and what folks thought was something that they were supposed to do because of their religion. And that was why some of these girls were being kept out of school, because the moms believed that they weren't supposed to go to school because it was in the Quran. But when I actually spoke to folks in Cameroon who study the Quran, they were like, there's a misunderstanding about what's actually in the text. And that really opened my eyes to sort of like this inequality and girls being kept out of school for all sorts of reasons. And often their parents thought that they were doing what was best for them. And that was a very difficult thing to hold that sometimes when parents marry girls off early or are keeping girls out of school, they think and they genuinely feel they're doing the best thing for their kid. And we have to hold that along with the reality that, these things can be very harmful to girls. And while I was there, I kept thinking, like, what can I do about this? And then I met volunteers. I met Peace Corps volunteers in Cameroon who showed me around and were telling me about their experiences and how they were tackling issues in education and issues in health and how they were bringing in a gender lens. And I thought, I have to do this. This is the next thing I have to do. And I've always been very methodical. I come from a Dominican family. And so my parents were never going to let me go to the Peace Corps unless I started on them early. So right after that, I was like, there's this thing I'm going to do some years out. And my mom was like, I'm never going to let you do that. But I just kept bringing it up over the years. And eventually she caved and there was nothing she could do about it.
Thanks, Jaynice. Some of what you said resonates with me as well. And just trying to decide if I was going to pack up my life for 2.5 years and put it in storage. For me, I had graduated college, and then I had worked for a little bit. Then I went back to graduate school and continued to work through that. And I worked mostly in the area of sexual violence prevention in New York City. And at the time I was working closely with a number of high-level actors, the fire department, NYPD, the DA's office, the Health and Hospitals Corporation that oversees public hospitals. And for me, I was frustrated, to say the least. I I wanted to see progress in my own community. I wanted to see action taken. And I thought, there has to be a better way to do this work because there's so many frustrating avenues. Every time we thought we had a win, we had 2 steps back. And at the same time, while I was doing this work, I kept remembering this experience I had with Volunteers for Peace, which is a group similar to Peace Corps, but short little stints, where you're able to contribute in some way to an array of projects. I actually was stationed in Holland in the Netherlands, and it was right after the Bosnian War. And I had worked in one of the refugee camp settings, and I saw all of the challenges that come with being a migrant to a new country. One that was different from what I knew because I grew up in an immigrant family that had some of these challenges, but being a refugee is a whole other experience, and trying to understand the laws, the access to healthcare, the access to livelihoods and food. It was a harrowing experience. And so as I was going through this difficult time in New York City, trying to navigate that system, and then remembering the challenges that I saw and the experiences that I had, I felt like this was my moment. This is my moment to merge these 2 worlds, to learn about another culture, another space, to take what I learned in graduate school. And once I got to site, once I got to country, I learned that I need to put those things aside and just learn from everyone else. So it was a humbling experience, but also one of the most invaluable decisions that set the course for my life thus far.
Thank you so much. It reminds me of the first answer. You said cultural humility, how important that is. Thank you both. And we have another question. Are opportunities more, relatively speaking, readily available in the private or in the public sector? And what can they learn from each other? So I'll give everyone like 10 seconds to think about that.
And by opportunities, do we mean opportunities to support gender equality, or just opportunities for women and girls in the workplace?
That is a good question. It wasn't there, so I will let you take it however you would like.
Sure.
Oh, no, I got a clarification. Workplace.
Okay, great. Oh, in the workplace.
Yeah.
Are there more opportunities for women and girls in the workplace, in the public or private sector? I think they're in both, absolutely. And as I said, in my own experience, I've had a lot of mentors, both men and women along the way, that have really guided my path. I've been so fortunate. And, you know, I had stints in between all of my various jobs where I worked for a short amount of time in the private sector. And there is so much to be learned from the private sector of how business is done. But likewise, there's a lot that can be learned from the public sector that can be translated into the private sector and the corporate world. One of the ways that I see these 2 places merging is in CSR, corporate social responsibility, which is a new and growing field. And there have been a lot of corporations that have set aside foundations, have joined global networks to support social good. And it's really an area where so much can be done. As many people know, the Gates Foundation is one of the pioneering leaders of pushing that type of agenda forward. But it's an evolution, you know. There are always ways to make that process easier or more impactful. I don't know, Jaynice, do you have some thoughts? You're in the philanthropic world, so maybe you have some uniquer perspective.
It's an interesting question because I've never worked in the private sector, So I feel like the things that I can say about the private sector are stereotypical things that I imagine are true about the private sector, but not that I've actually experienced. I can speak on the public sector and philanthropy, which sometimes falls somewhere in between, and say that there are many opportunities in the public sector. And one of the things that I have found to be really exciting is that I've been in several organizations that have been women-led and have been majority women. And so that has been really fun and exciting for me because there's just a difference. The vibe is different. There's in my experience, has been just very collaborative. You know, just really aware of power dynamics and hierarchy. Not perfect, right? We still live in a patriarchal world. There's still patriarchal systems, and that sort of, and norms that infiltrate all kinds of institutions. But it has been nice to be in the public sector and to not feel alone, to not feel like I'm the only one in this space with this gender experience. So that's been really great. I agree with Theresa. From what I know, I think there are opportunities in both, but I think that the way that you navigate them is probably very different.
Yes, thank you both. Thank you both for those answers. The next one we have is knowing what you know now. How do you think Peace Corps should be preparing volunteers, including men, to make a difference in girls' lives?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Knowing what you know now, how do you think Peace Corps should be preparing volunteers, including men, to make a difference in women and girls' lives?
One of the things that I've learned throughout my career, and that I think is sort of a data point that doesn't get enough attention, is that men and boys are making a lot of the decisions for girls within the household. And so it's their educational decisions, decisions about marriage, etc. And I think a lot of our programs, even the programs that we fund, that Girls First Fund, really target girls and mothers. And it's important to target girls and mothers, but we also need to make a greater effort to figure out how to have conversations and really target men and boys. Because if the fathers and the uncles and the brothers are the ones that are making the decision, then we're kind of going around the target as opposed to going directly to the target. I think that in trainings, maybe highlighting some of those things, and encouraging volunteers to engage not only with women's groups, but also engage with men, engage with boys. It's like, how do we talk about things like masculinity? How do we, have conversations about how gender equality is not something that's only important for women and girls, but also for men and boys. That, these ideas of like what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to act, what it means to be a man can be very harmful to men and boys as well. And I think that we hesitate a lot to go in that direction because of the power imbalance. And there are a lot of feminists, a lot of us, and including myself, that get a little nervous when we talk too much about men and boys. And we're like, okay, well, if we center them when they're already centered in everything, is it all going to become about them? But like Theresa said, when she was speaking, we can't do this work without them. It involves all of us. And so, starting conversations about how to create programs that focus on men and boys, I think would be a good first step.
This is such a critical question. I feel like I want more time to reflect on it, to really put forward something meaningful. But I will say, in my initial thoughts for Peace Corps volunteers going in into their site placement or into service in general, it's important to have a conversation around context and you know, in certain situations, it may not be the best time to speak up, and it may be more harmful in certain settings for the woman or girl who may be experiencing violence if a volunteer speaks up, for example. So I think it's a difficult thing to navigate, and I can imagine in Peace Corps training, one thing that would be helpful is to share these type of scenarios that may arise and have conversations. Like, what would you do in this situation, or how would you handle it, or what would be the most appropriate? And because that happens here in the United States as well, when well-intended supporters, allies intervene, it can be more aggressive when something like that happens. So I think that mindfulness around that curriculum of creating spaces, but also not doing harm, that balance is really necessary.
I really like that, creating spaces while not doing harm. That's great. Thank you both. So next one, what advice can you give to other up and coming women leaders?
Yeah, I feel like I'm still up and coming, so I'd like advice as well. You know, you never stop growing and you never stop evolving, and I think every experience offers lessons, and that's something that really resonates with me, because along the way early on I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do, and it didn't always happen. And then I would be in these spaces and I'd be asked to copy edit the MDG goal on maternal health, and I felt like, well, I have better skills than copy editing. but the value of participating is so immense. Like, every opportunity I would say yes to, because I never knew when that next opportunity would afford me another opportunity. Mind you, that skill set of copy editing really comes in handy when you write grants. And so now I can just go through and mark something up and push something out, and it's amazing. So I would say if one is early on in his or her career, I would not write off every experience, and use it as a sort of checklist to understand. Maybe you work in a certain space, maybe you work in communications, maybe you work on advocacy or policy, and it's not really resonating with you. That too in itself is great information. That will help you navigate your career and find spaces where you really feel your heart is full, where you really feel that you're making a difference and that you're in alignment.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think what I would add is that your job is not your career. So that's a lesson that I've learned in the last 5 years, is that what I want out of my career, I cannot get only with my job. And so the kind of autonomy that I seek at times, or opportunities to share a really specific idea that I'm excited about, there are many different avenues where I can share or exert my passion for this work, this being one example. And so I have learned not to expect one aspect of my career to fulfill all of my needs. I actually am starting a project called the Feminist Idea Lab, which is sort of a tiny philanthropic fund to resource individual girl ideas, because I've been wanting to do it for a long time, haven't been able to do it through my organization. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to do this myself. And so if you really want to do something, go ahead and do it. Find support, find allies, lean on your family, lean on your friends, and put it out there, because a fulfilling career isn't just about where you work. It's about the people you're meeting, the events you go to, the projects you work on the side, you know, a board that invites you to engage. And it can be vast and expansive and exciting. And you don't have to put so much pressure on just one part of it.
Thank you both. That was great. And we also see that passion that Jaynice was talking about. That's why you're both here and kind of creating those spaces for women and girls. And we are so honored that you're here with us tonight. All right. And please, if anyone else has any questions for our wordies, please put them in the chat or message me directly. I have here, do you think that your gender identity as a woman was an asset or a liability to you personally in reaching your professional goals?
For me, it was both. And I know that might sound like a cop-out answer, so I'm going to explain why. I was in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia, and when I was there, a lot of people thought that I was Ethiopian. And so it was a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it allowed me to sort of blend in and not get as much street harassment as some of my peers did. But on the other hand, I had this like set of really strict expectations put on me, because even though I wasn't Ethiopian, a lot of people said that I just didn't know my background and that it was very clear to them that I was Habesha. And so I had always had a passion for this work, but I had been sort of hesitant to fully lean into it. And it wasn't until I was in the Peace Corps and I experienced several things. And one of the most jarring was that one day I was at the hospital because I was sick, and I was laughing with another volunteer. And this older Ethiopian woman came up to me and grabbed me really hard on the wrist and told me in Amharic, "Don't laugh like that, because the only women or girls who laugh like that are seeking male attention. Like, you're looking for male attention. You're not supposed to do that." And anyone that knows me knows that I have a very big laugh. I love to laugh. Who doesn't love to laugh? And so that was really jarring for me. Like, it felt like, wow, like my joy is being policed, right? Like it just felt like I had such a visceral reaction. And so in that way, it was a liability, but it was also those experiences that propelled me to really do something about it. If I hadn't had those experiences, I would have been like, oh, it's important, but it's not that important. But having those experiences, I was like, oh no, I have to do something about this. So that's why I say that it was both.
Yeah, I agree. It's also both for me. One of the things that has solidified my career in this field is the sisterhood of women in this space that have paved the way and shown me how to navigate certain situations. Unfortunately, there are situations to be navigated. And that's just the reality of this setting. So I think in that respect, just having wonderful mentors, and I saw there was that comment in the chat. I absolutely agree. Mentorship is so important. I encourage everyone to become a mentor as much as be a mentee. It's something that I do in my community, and it really has boundless rewards beyond what you see in front of you for years onward. But I think that sisterhood, being in the workplace, has given me the boon and the confidence that I needed to move forward and make decisions and be bold. But at the same time, there's so many times where I was one of few women or the only woman sitting at the table, sometimes with military folks sitting at the table, and it was very daunting, or in other settings where it's very corporate. And in those situations, while intimidating, it made me resilient, and it made me assert my perspective in a way that I am usually not challenged in an all women's space. And so it forced me to stand in my own shoes, and recognize that my contributions were truly unique and worthwhile and valuable and valid. And that is something that, again, I credit my family with being so encouraging and creating that resolve within me.
Those are beautiful answers. Thank you so much for sharing. I didn't even hear liability. I heard that liability for both of you was turned into drive, and that kind of encouragement. So thank you. That is the end of the question and answers. Just huge a shout out and clap to Jaynice and Theresa for answering all those questions and for inspiring all of us. I'm going to go ahead now and turn it back over to Jody. Thank you.
It's hard to know what to say after that wonderful discussion and the leadership that both of you have shown in your work, in your energy, in your professionalism, in your personal life, and tonight for all of us. We've all heard and watched two leaders who have really shown us what helping women and girls win means here and across continents around the world. Mm-hmm. And what we've watched is how they've helped women and girls thrive within families and communities, and even on a national level. What I'm really struck with in listening to both of you, and you offered so much, is that even with big things that you do, setting up organizations, reaching out to vast communities, what I heard from both of you is the continuation of the daily small gestures. You know, when you talked about creating space for a one-on-one conversation, for reaching to girls and boys, and how do we mix and begin to understand who we all are together better. That part of what I take away is, as the day begins, what can I do? And sometimes we get a little intimidated when we think about, what can we do? Well, you've given us the guidance for it. Is it to call a friend, to call a woman friend or a girlfriend, or to say to a girl, let's read together, let's do something together? And mentoring, and thank you, Theresa, for reinforcing that. And I saw that Corey also noted it, that I think mentoring is something that we can all give on any given day when we're thinking, what's important for us to do? And Theresa, I remain in awe that your mother found that poster and put it in your room when you were a kid, to be able to tell you with all your brothers that you were going to be just fine and you could be a strong woman. That poster continues to remind me of what every one of us can do. It's a word here. No matter what, it's that support, that energy, that mentorship that we all give. So I want to thank you for what you have offered us tonight, because I think you have really encouraged us in what we can do, what we need to do, and you have given us mentorship. All of us, you have mentored us, and you have given us further goals that we have for all women and girls with whom we can interact. Thank you so much. Next slide. As we move on and we say goodbye, I wanted to note two pieces. One is that we are raising money for these awards. Women of Peace Corps Legacy are raising money for these awards. And for the organizations, as you heard about tonight, that our awardees select. We want to meet, we have a $30,000 goal for each of these two awards. And we would like to achieve that goal by the end of December of this year. Soon. And two things that will drive us forward in hopefully achieving that award. One, through two generous anonymous donors, that we have donors these two donors will match anything that's contributed up to $5,000 for each of the two awards for a total of $10,000. And encouragingly, we've already reached half of our goal. So we're way on the way, but to be able to do it, it is about continuing these awards and continuing support for the organizations that come as part of these awards. So I encourage anyone, as you can, to make a contribution, particularly before December 31st. And you see all the information about that. Next slide. And then finally, the upcoming events. As I said, one of the elements of Women of Peace Corps Legacy are our monthly events and our activities. So as you see, next month, we're going to feature Carrie Hessler-Redland, who was the 19th Peace Corps Director and spent years as Deputy Director as well as years being Peace Corps Director, and has had a wonderful long career, particularly supporting women and girls in many, many different areas of her life. So stay tuned for that. And we're going to have our virtual holiday party. So stay tuned for the date. And then we can't tell you now, but we're already working on January, which is going to have, I think, a particularly exciting focus for younger women and the mentorship between all of us as professionals as we help each other. And as I said before, if you would like to become a member, go to the website. It's very easy. Just sign up. Membership is free. And what it does is give you an opportunity to participate and to be part of women who are here to support each other, support women in the US, women around the world, and to make women and girls strong and winners, as we are talking about this event being on the day of the Girl Child, honoring the International Girl Child. Thank you all for being part of it. We're very excited. But again, Theresa and Jaynice, thank you so much for what you have given us. You are wonderful. So with that, we'll say goodbye. And again, to all of us, all of you who have been part of this evening, just special greetings, special hugs. You know me, I always do a hug. And just to say thank you for such terrific participation. So with that, good evening, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.